So we are going to start our second session in this morning, as we have limited timings, and so our first speaker this morning is Yunita. She's an anthropology professor, and she's she's a member of the Cultural Commission, the Indonesian Academy of Science. So Yunita, if you could hear me, now you could have the mic.
So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all participants. Thank you for your introduction, Mr. Yan. Thanks also to the organizing committee for inviting me to share my experience related to the theme of the conference. So based on my experience for almost 4 decades, while also immersing in with a number of farming communities in Indonesia, I argue that farmers still have to struggle to survive in the midst of unsustainable planet, which has been complicated with the unpredictable risk of climate change. So in such a situation, my colleagues and I from the Universitas Indonesia, in collaboration with agrometeorologists, decided to facilitate farmers to becoming farmer researchers and self-help farmers to enable them developing their own responsive farming to the risk of climate change and the continuous hazards as the results of the current policies and practices in agriculture. Yeah. So, in reality, do we all live in a sustainable planet? So I would say no. Maybe some presenters also already mentioned that. Yeah. So if not, why not? Yeah. The problem is that I have observed the changes in the way the policymakers and those in authority define the policy of development programs on the basis of power and money, no longer power and knowledge, as Foucault argues. So power, knowledge, and money. So making profit as much as possible in any opportunities becomes the main goal of the corporates by collaborating with those in power and authority. So this is my question on curiosity. Where is the significant role of science and knowledge? So global development by whom, for whom? The situation of our planet has become more vulnerable due to the increasing variability of climate and the more severe and unpredictable consequences of climate change. So for the greening communities, the condition increases uncertainties and confusion for them of what to do to stay survive. These are the photos of the strong and long period of El Nino affecting the growth of paddy plants and sudden intensive rainfalls during rainy season and La Nina condition of ENSO. So within the absence of similar precedents in the past, farmers just do trial and error without adequate knowledge of the reason and probable future conditions with the possibility of non-resilient results and maladaptive consequences. So, the followings are the overview of the situations in Indonesia with the state and oligarch collaboration. I'm sorry to use strong phrases of the genocide and ecocide of our existing local communities and Indonesia-rich natural resources. These are some examples: land marine grab conversion, local communities marginalization and exclusion, high degree of corruption, social injustice, and large gap between the rich and the poor still exist. So this is a photo of a beautiful island as a part of the famous ecotourism. Islands became the mining excavation. So, and the photo here are the children of foragers who previously lived in a rainforest, and the rainforest has already been transformed into oil palm plantation, and the foragers' children now collecting the seeds of the oil palm. So how about the greening communities in agriculture sector? So they have to face, they have to face states' high productivity program to reduce import of staple foods, cultivating unused lands, converting forests into food estate zones, technology-driven instead of knowledge transfer, farming armed force farmers. Farmers are invited to be armed force, and also placing armed force in villages. So you see here the photo of what you call it, around 10 pesticides, fungicides, herbicides, and farmers used to mix together. So how to recover from hazards? Where is the state? The state is absent. The agriculture extension officers are not always there. But on the other hand, corporate is present to promote chemical inputs on time. So scientists, where are they? They are all not always accessible. So there is a relational gap. So, on the other hand, without adequate knowledge and appropriate climate services by the government, farmers' responses towards the unseen and unforeseen risks are inadequate, which led to maladaptive risks to their livelihood. This is the late transplanting schedule at the time of high intensity and distribution of rainfall in early 2025. So the unforeseen rainfall pattern due to climate change and the lack of anticipation capability of farmers led to maladaptive consequences. And the unseen causes of withered chili plant due to fungi and the inappropriate control strategy by mixing diverse kinds of pesticides led to harvest reduction and failure. So farmers cannot identify whether the withered chili caused by fungi or by virus or by bacteria, since they do not know where to go to get the information and how to solve their problems. So learning and understanding the situation since 2008, my colleagues and I developed the lifelong educational commitment to enable farmers to learn how to cope better with any hazards and climate change through the science field shops. So in the science field shops, we place farmers as the researchers in their own field. So the photo introduces you how the learning process that each farmer has to learn to be rainfall observer to know exactly the rainfall pattern in a particular seasons and climate. And these are photos of a lady observing the impact of rainfall to field and plant, and to take note of observation results. Now, after collecting the data for 1 month, farmers get together in the monthly evaluation meeting. So they have to, present the data they are collecting, not only the rainfall data, but also what are happening in their fields, ecosystems, and plants during the last months of rainfall pattern. So this is to share the agrometeorological analysis and vulnerabilities found in the field. So to get some inputs from fellow farmers of how to solve the problems. If they cannot find the solution by themselves through their own discussions and exchange of ideas, then they can find the information, or they can contact the experts from the close universities or agricultural staff to get the solution. So to give you an overview of our education program through the science field shops, we provide 8 climate services. So the first is measuring rainfall daily in farmers' own fields, like I introduced earlier. Second is observing agroecosystem and carrying out monthly evaluations, like you see in the photos before. And not only that, the most significant lessons is evaluating yields together. Why my yields only produce certain tons per hectare? Why yours are higher than mine? why the yields this season is different from the previous season, also from the same season in the last year. So they learn from their reflection and evaluation of how to avoid the reduction of yields in the future. And since this is a lifelong educational commitment, we cannot be there forever. So farmers have to be able to organize the science field shops activities by themselves and to institutionalize the learning process, and now how to replicate it to share their knowledge to other farmers. And the important thing of our duty is disseminating climate scenarios. What is going to happen in the coming 3 months? Will there be El Nino, La Nina, neutral, or a wet, dry season, or a long drought? So we disseminate the climate scenarios, and they have to interpret it by themselves. So providing new knowledge in line with farmers' needs to solve vulnerabilities. If their knowledge is they do not know what kind of disease is that, so they can find new knowledge about that disease or pest infestation and how to control them. 7 is carrying out win-win solution experimentations in farmer fields, how to avoid harvest failure or reduction of yields, but also together with that, how to mitigate the emission of gas. So, and the last one is digitizing rainfall and agroecosystem data to be the basis for farmers' anticipation and decision, also to secure their data in the digital form. So by doing that, so all the results of the educational commitment in agrometeorological learning, by providing those climate services, we hope, and it is already in reality, that farmers are becoming farmer researchers and also being self-help farmers. This is a book I edited with my colleagues. Bisa Dewe means we can do it ourselves. So this is a story of a number of farmers become plant breeders. So they do the breeding of their own cultivars, so to produce seeds that they like it. Not only the price and the productivity, but also the taste, palatable taste, and also secure their harvest, resistant to pests and disease. Now, by being able to learn from the past and present and anticipate what is going to happen in the future, so they are able to make decisions and develop response farming towards climate change and hazards. So, for example, we provide the seasonal scenario of 2023 of El Nino. So farmers already anticipate, oh, there will be a long drought. What should I do if I have half irrigated or rain-fed fields? Usually I plant rice, but if water is not available enough for the whole season of planting rice, then I better plant vegetables instead of rice. So rather than not having any income, they can still have some yields from the horticultural and vegetables fields, and they can sell it, and then they can earn some incomes. But how about the farmers of irrigated rice fields? So if the irrigation water is available, but probably not for the whole planting season, so, and I do not have any other water resources, then some farmer improve soil texture and humidity in irrigated rice fields. So those are only a few examples, of how farmers respond to the challenges, threats, and hazards led to the increasing vulnerabilities in their habitat by being able to sustain their harvest and livelihood. I'm convinced that educating farmers by improving their learning capability and not by introducing technology per se is the most effective way to help them sustaining their habitat and responding to the national and global development challenges. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your kind attention. Yeah. So back to you, Mr. Yan.
Thank you, Yunita. Let's welcome our next speaker, Professor Lingnan. From Professor of Sociology at Catholic University of Daegu, South Korea.
大家好, it is great honor to participate in South Forum for Sustainability. It is 12, so I remember I have participated many times, and I was owed a lot of knowledge and practices thanks to participating in this forum, and I give my sincere thanks to all of the organizers who spent their energy to create this space. So my point is, in a very brief time, I just touch on the global level of discourses on development. And the second part is related with the Korean national context, and the third part is related with the alternatives, which is usually based in local basement. So there are many cases, but I recently I have encountered with new challenges, so I share that cases with you. So usually the discourse on development overrided in global arena. So in early 60s and 70s, we are overwhelmed by the task of modernization, especially the so-called marginalized country, not Western country, who want to follow the Western model. So modernization is the Polish task for us, and not only for us, for all the other countries. And from 50s to until to millennium, so everybody has calculated what is the achievement of modernization, but we found that there are still very much marginalized sector in relation with the basic subsistence. So from the UN level, they made a certain goal, Millennium Development Goals, which is more focused on poverty alleviation and women and the children's basic safety net. But until 2015, the MDG, Millennium Development Goals, has been pursued by the global arena. But we found in 2015, we found that was not that effective. So, for example, at the starting point of MDG, there is 33 LDC least developed countries, but in around 2015, there are more than 44 LDC countries were there. So in that sense, the promotion of Millennium Development Goals was not duly achieved a certain goal. So they set up new standard for the Sustainable Development Goals from 2015. So the targeted year is 2030. So through those kind of discourse changes, we can see the development, how those kind of development related ideology have changed based on the realities. So still we are struggling on the issue of sustainable development. And the reason why we develop a new kind of concept, new kind of concept is related with a certain dark side of modernization, because modernization has promoted very industrialization, and it is closely related with the urbanization, and then means some kind of collapse of a community, and very isolated individualization has been accelerated. So the modernization has been against the direction of the some kind of a declining of agricultural farming, and declining of denial of tradition, and it is more focused on westernization, and they are more focusing on market rather than social community. So I think that kind of drive cannot, that kind of drive has resulted in many problematics. So the extreme polarization, and the very serious environmental degradation, and most of all, collapse of society. So in that sense, the individual life are driven by competition, and the highly dense urban city cannot accommodate a whole population. So that was the basic situation. So I just briefly introduced the shot of the global engagement of Millennium Development Goals. And you can go, yeah. So there are 8 targets related with poverty alleviation, and also women and the children's basic safety. And then it was, as I already explained, it was not achieved. So they set up new Sustainable Development Goals in 2015. So they emphasized more inequality issue in the national level, or the global level of inequality, and also national level of inequality. And they made very clear those kind of inequality became the result of modernization, and also became the very basic tools to renovate redrive the modernization process. For example, the gender equality and the country equity and the inclusive society and global partnership is the means and the tools of sustainable development goals. Of course, within the sustainable development goals, the environment issue has been highlighted also. So you can see you may know all, so I just briefly introduce the goals. So for the share, so you can see the 17 goals already. So you can go, and I will introduce the South Korean case. So the Republic of Korea is some kind of a good student and a forerunner of a modernization process. So through those kind of some kind of a good student course, we have challenged a very serious decrease of population, and some kind of a collapse of a local entity, and serious degradation of ecosystem. So you can see the Korean fertility rate. It is one of the most agreed social agenda, because our fertility rate is 0.72 or 3 right now. So so everybody thought maybe in some time the population of Korea may disappear. So that was the one big social issue. So you can see the other population data, the UN trend. So there is a serious and sharp decrease of population. And also to compensate those of population, the immigration has been adopted as a new means to cope with the decrease of population. So some kind of this integration of a new population is the big issue in Korea also. And you can see the local counties are emptied right now. The red light means some kind of a signal of disease of local city. So that was the serious problems. And recently we had a very serious forest fires. So the lasting days became longer and longer because of the eco-diversity system has been collapsed. So once the fire has started, it lasted very longer, and the wide range of land were impacted by those kind of events. So, and then still there are many the conflict between the protection of green belt and more development discourse. So we have many environmental activists try to protect the green belt, but it was not easy when they are faced with development profit. So, and then the energy issue has come out. So, but Korea also highly dependent on development strategy of industrialization with the carbon-based energy. And the global standard, they emphasize the changes of renewable energy, but the South Korean cases, comparing with the average of OECD countries, still it is very lower. Adopting wind and some kind of solar energy. So there are very serious reflections on modernization has been coming out with the certain political leaders and some activists on the, especially on the ecological concern and the revitalization of agriculture, and how to revive the rural society, and how to develop a community. But that was very long-term project. When we drive through modernization, it was very easy to destroy those kind of things, but to reconstructing those area, it is very time consuming, and it is not relevant to the government policy, which are driving the very visible efficiency. So, but there are many myriad of trials of alternative trials, but they are patchworked and scattered. So there are many cases. But I just highlight one cases because I thought it is meaningful, because it is related with the revaluation of community life. Not that, so it is but the modernization is the kind of value system. So to reconstruct and redrive the modernization, we should challenge a certain level of valuation. So in that sense, one alternative cases has challenged the revaluation of community life and some kind of multi-partnership with the intergenerational and some kind of intersectoral. So very, it is a kind of a multi-partnership related. And so that was the one case that I want to share. It is you may see from the Netflix, because there is the writer was very, they say it is she is the middle of 30s, so it is a new generation writer, and she reflects her parents' modernization life stories, and then they realized how much community support has been there to those kind of urban modernization life to be possible. So in that sense, the daughter generation give certain thanks to the parents, some kind of a communal support. So that drama became very popular, and then echoed with those kind of, it became globally highlighted, and then many of certain local community, they thought those typical parents' life who have sacrificed their all the resources, energies, and based on community, they support their children to live in urban city, and all the grandmas, over 80s, late 70s, some of them are early 90s. They thought those two protagonists in that drama, their story is mine. So they identified that story with themselves, and they redefined their own life, which were marginalized by the modern valuation. So they rediscover their own perspective, and they produced a certain art product with the drawings. So we have some exhibition. There are many different views. So what their view on the sea, and what their view on the fish, what their view on the woods and the trees, and the very vivid and different color exhibition. So their identity, their communal identity, coming out into the mainstream media, and they share they find through those kind of some kind of common ground. They share the they share and find the commonalities of their life stories. So through those kind of activities, I think they can do culturally reinterpret their lives, and finding certain communities. So through those kind of energy, they can put their energy together in community building, and also these kind of their activities echoed the nationwidely. And also sometimes we had the Jeju International Forum, so their story has been echoed within the global setting. So I think it is a kind of a new challenges to reevaluation of the modernization. So we want to see the some kind of the other side of modernization. So we try to find that there is a very famous Korean poet, activist Kim Ji-ha, and he always emphasized the white shade. So within the shade, there is some possibility of alternatives. So in that sense, we can see through their perception, we can see the white shadow through this kind of overwhelming modernization. So all those kind of a new trial. So our task is how to integrate those kind of endeavors to challenge redefinition of development. So for that, I have been owed a lot for South-South Forum for Sustainability from 2011 until now. So thank you for the invitation.
Good afternoon, everyone. And good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, I'd like to thank all of the organisers for inviting me to Shangyou for their warm and generous hospitality and for giving me the opportunity to speak and to meet a lot of wonderful people. So thank you. The topic of my talk today is Perth, Western Australia, an example of what happens when finance and other frontier sectors take over a society in a biodiversity hotspot. Perth is my home city, but sadly it is following a that is the complete opposite of Shangyou County's sustainable ecological development model. In terms of the theme of today's session, Perth represents a failure of sustainability. I want to summarise the situation by reading an exchange of emails I had recently, a couple of months ago, with a new acquaintance in Poland. When I told him that I live in Perth, my new Polish acquaintance remarked, "You live in Perth? Great city. I have been there in February 1995. I responded by saying, "I'm pleased to hear you visited in 1995. Perth really was a great city then, and I loved it. But things have changed drastically for the worse since then. The population has nearly doubled. The increase started with a mining boom in the 2000s that saw people migrate to Perth so that they could be based in Perth to fly in and out of the mines, saving mining companies the cost of establishing towns near the mines, as happened in the past. On top of that, Australia has been running a mass migration program for the past 20 years or so, the immigration rate being the highest or close to the highest in the Western countries. So the city has grown. The suburban sprawl of the Perth metropolitan area now stretches up and down the coast for 150 kilometres, making it the longest city in the world on some definitions. And the suburbs closer to the centre of the city are being infilled by building multiple dwellings on blocks that once had a single home and a garden, trees, and a backyard for children to play in. Traffic congestion has become a serious problem. The tree canopy in the suburbs has disappeared in many places. It has declined by 50% in the suburb in which I live, and the cost of living, mainly driven by real estate prices, has skyrocketed. All this has been great for the banks, real estate developers, insurers, mining companies, other monopolists, and Australia's two major shopping chains and other national retailers that benefit from having more customers. That is, the finance, insurance and real estate, or FIRE sector, natural resource extractors and other rentiers are the main beneficiaries. But for most of the people, the quality of life has deteriorated significantly. While fly-in and fly-out work to the mines wrecks families and communities, and the mentality and cultural level of society has changed, as more and more people have come to believe that life is about making as much money as possible, and then, if they can afford it after paying for housing, buying toys like big four-wheel drive vehicles, boats, jet skis, and so on, or other unnecessary consumer items. But more concerning, at least for me, and certainly for the other species that live here, is the ecological destruction that has come with this growth. Perth is in one of the world's 36 biodiversity hotspots, regions with very high biodiversity, which are threatened by human habitation, having already lost at least 70% of their primary vegetation. Notwithstanding this, being in a biodiversity hotspot, property developers and miners have been allowed to run amok, destroying bushland and forests around Perth. Bushland is cleared for housing without even knowing what species may be being destroyed. Even when it is known that a species is being destroyed or devastated, the development goes on. So an example I was going to show on the screen, but I can perhaps show later, is the Carnaby's black cockatoo. It's a big parrot. And as a child, I saw huge flocks of these around Perth, but no more. The species is now endangered, and a related species, the Borden's black cockatoo, which is very similar to it, is now critically endangered. Account suggests that the Perth coastal plains population of Carnaby's cockatoos declined by 50% between 2010 to 2016. That's in just 6 years. More of their habitat has been destroyed since then, and the destruction is ongoing. The latest thing making the news in this regard is a proposal by a German-owned miner to clear a protected woodland important to the cockatoos for a sand mine, for the sand needed to build more houses for the human population that is still growing rapidly. People of my and my parents' generations who know what Perth was like are mostly appalled at what has happened. But they are really only waking up to it now, like the goldfish in a goldfish bowl, who are the last to realise that their water home has turned putrid. So sadly, Perth is not the city it was. It still has beautiful places, and I love its nature, the plants and wildlife, but no longer the city nor the mentality of the majority of its inhabitants. My Polish acquaintance was saddened to hear this, but remarked that the same sort of thing is happening in all Western countries, which is unfortunately true, as the finance and other rentier sectors have come to dominate them. In Western Australia, it is both the fire sector and the natural resources sector that have come to dominate, to the detriment of both humans and the environment. I'll elaborate on a few points, and I was going to show a map in my slides, but if you imagine Australia is like that, down the bottom, it's in the southwest corner is where the biodiversity hotspot is. So the southwest corner of Western Australia was recognised as a global biodiversity hotspot in 2000 by Conservation International, when it was included in Conservation International's list of the world's 25 most critical regions for biodiversity conservation. There are now 36 recognised global biodiversity hotspots. As I've mentioned, a biodiversity hotspot is a region with significant levels of biodiversity that is threatened by human habitation. There are two criteria for being a hotspot. The first is high plant endemism. There must be at least 1,500 endemic vascular plant species. The Southwest Australia Biodiversity Hotspot has over 7,000 plant species, with well over a half being endemic, found nowhere else on Earth. It contains about 50% of Australia's native plant species in just 4% of Australia's land area. The second criteria is that the region must have lost at least 70% of its primary vegetation. So almost the opposite of Shangyou, which has 80% of vegetation. In the case of Southwest Australia, less than 30% of the original vegetation remains intact due to agriculture, urbanisation, logging and mining. Historically, agriculture has been the main cause of habitat loss, along with logging. But in more recent times, urbanisation has been a major cause. Since 2000, when the Southwest was recognised as a biodiversity hotspot, the population has almost doubled from 1.3 million to 2.3 million. This population increase might not be so bad in itself, and it is minuscule in global terms. But it has been accompanied by a near doubling in the size of the Perth urban area, with Australians building the biggest or close to the biggest new houses in the world, and this despite being family sizes getting smaller as the cost of living has increased and means that Australians are having less children. It's a little bit like, I think, the situation in Korea. The destruction of bushland habitat to cater for all this urbanisation has been huge. Over 80% of the habitat on the Swan Coastal Plain, which is the plain on which Perth is located, has now been destroyed. Next to urbanisation as a cause of habitat loss today is mining, especially for bauxite in what are known as the northern Jarrah forests. Jarrah is a species of eucalypt. These forests are a habitat for the Carnaby's cockatoo I mentioned earlier. Alcoa, the multinational American aluminium company, is the major bauxite miner in Western Australia. It has historically operated in Western Australia under an agreement with the state government rather than under the normal laws, and is exempt from much of the state's Environmental Protection Act. Disturbingly, just last week, it was reported that Alcoa has plans to clear as many as 150,000 potential black cockatoo nesting sites to expand its operations through the Northern Jarrah forests. The Greens Party has described it as undoubtedly the most significant threat to the survival of WA's black cockatoos. One has to hope that the government will reject Alcoa's proposal, and there has been some recent good news in that the state government recently rejected a small mining company's plan to clear just 2.3 hectares of critical cockatoo habitat for lithium exploration. But Alcoa is a big mining company, and the mining industry is very powerful in Western Australia. The case of another black cockatoo is illustrative. It's the Bowden's black cockatoo, which I also mentioned before. It is considered critically endangered by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature and BirdLife International, which is the world's main birding association. But in July just gone, the state government rejected a nomination to upgrade the conservation status of the Bowden's cockatoo from endangered to critically endangered. The West Australian branch of BirdLife has accused the decision as being made under pressure from the mining industry and as sidelining science in what is a systemic failure. BirdLife went on to say that if the government proceeds with business as usual, the Bowden's cockatoo will be functionally extinct in 50 years, meaning there might be a few in captive populations, but it will not exist in its own environment. Not only plants and animals, but the humans of Perth are under threat from the mining industry. It has also recently made news that the state government has allowed Alcoa to mine in the water catchment area for one of Perth's major water sources, the Serpentine Dam, threatening the water supply with contamination. This dam supplies 10% of Perth's drinking water, and there is a credible risk of heavy metal and toxic contamination from Alcoa's operations. Despite the government knowing of this risk, having been warned about it by its own water authority, which has a contingency plan to distribute bottled water if there's an accident. So despite the government knowing of the risk, the mining operations have been allowed to proceed. So this further illustrates the power of the mining industry in Western Australia. And the industry, of course, also blocks laws threatening to it. Last year, Australia's federal government proposed reforms to the National Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act to include stronger protections for nature and an independent environmental protection authority at the national level. Despite most Australians wanting stronger nature laws, the Western Australian mining industry successfully lobbied to block the reform. And they were helped in this by the West Australian government itself, with Western Australia's state premier, the leader of the West Australia's government, directly lobbying Australia's Prime Minister not to proceed with the reforms. The Western Australian state government, and indeed Australia's federal government, are captured by the mining industry. It is difficult for any politician to get into government and remain there unless acceptable to the mining industry. Like the mining industry, like mining and other rentier sectors everywhere, Australia's mining industry uses its rentier wealth to ensure the government is supportive of it and to block anything threatening to it. For example, in 2010, Australia's federal government under Prime Minister Kevin Rudd sought to introduce a mining super profits tax, or more accurately, a natural resources rent tax. The mining industry, with West Australian miners prominent, successfully campaigned to block the tax and helped overthrow Prime Minister Rudd, whose replacement Prime Minister introduced a mining tax designed by the mining industry that ultimately collected virtually no tax from the miners, and it was quietly forgotten. So Australia, and especially West Australian governments, are invariably supportive of the mining industry, and indeed are typically of the same mindset, believing in endless economic growth and making wealth through mining. This alliance between government and mining is locked in by a revolving door of government officials moving from government into lucrative positions in the mining industry. In 2021, for instance, Western Australia's then State Treasurer and a former Finance Minister and Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, after leaving Parliament in March 2021, had by October that year become a director of the mining giant Rio Tinto, and subsequently became a director of Australia's major LNG extraction company, Woodside. So with the power of the mining industry and its capture of the West Australian and national governments, mining is proceeding apace, largely of the environmental consequences, and will remain a major threat to the Southwest biodiversity hotspot for the foreseeable future. So will increasing urbanisation and suburban sprawl, because the Australian government has increasingly come to rely on population growth and mass migration or immigration to achieve economic growth, as the Australian economy has deindustrialised under the neoliberal policies of recent decades, and also to support the fire sector by feeding more people, new people, into Australia's massive real estate bubble. In short, Perth, with its largely unfettered mining industry and extreme urban sprawl, provides an example of unsustainability under rentier finance capitalism. It is the very opposite of Shangyou County's wonderful model of green ecological development, which I think can provide an example for the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley, for your presentation. Next, we're going to invite the Lingnan Gardeners team from Lingnan University to come and share. Lingnan Gardeners is a project established by the Lingnan University. It's a communal garden where they grow food and vegetables on the university campus, thereby creating a network within the local community. Let's welcome 4 team members from the Lingnan Gardeners project. We have Ouyang Lichang, Jingpei Yun, who are both research officers at Lingnan University. Just last week, Hong Kong, oh, just a second, we're hearing echoes. Just this last week, Hong Kong issued 4 black rainstorm warnings in just 8 days. This has made records in Hong Kong's history. Moreover, the typhoon season in Hong Kong has just begun. This extreme weather has been increasing every year since 2015. So we can see that more of these extreme weather happening. While Hong Kong is one of the most densely populated regions in the world, its forest coverage rate is 38%, which is considerable in highly urbanized cities. Similarly, the agricultural land area in Hong Kong is 6% of its total area, while the long-term cultivated land area only accounts for 0.2%. The number of registered farmers is only about 5,000. while 98% of the vegetables are imported. Under such difficult conditions of agricultural production, we set up a project with the theme of agricultural education here at Lingnan University. The project is called Lingnan Gardeners. It is inspired by the concept of the British transition town movement, combining with the practice of China's rural construction movement. Transition town is a concept of urban transformation whose original intention is to deal with the global climate crisis and energy crisis, and later evolved into a social practice to deal with the problem of modern development. Drawing both on the reality of Hong Kong and the teaching needs of Lingnan University, we put forward the concept of transition campus. To change the traditional teaching model of the university, we introduced agricultural education into the campus. The original idea was to pass on the idea of eating healthy food and paying attention to food safety through agriculture. With the development of the food industry, we are seeing the abuse of additives, excessive pesticide residues, and industrial synthetic foods are not what food is actually like. So to eat safe and healthy food, we need to practice, grow, and produce our own food. Most of the college students here at Lingnan University have never been to the field or even seen a large area of land. They don't know where vegetables and grain come from. So they spend most of their time in farming. Under the scorching sun, they walk onto the farm. They experience the difficulty of farmers in repeated labor, learn to cherish food, and understand the importance of food safety. Lingnan Gardeners teaches everyone to farm and encourages people to produce their own food in their own vacant lot or balcony or any space that they can utilize to plant. Because healthy food can grow not only in farmland, but also in these gaps of cities. In recent years, the impact of climate collapse has become more and more obvious. It seems that every summer has become the hottest in history, and so has winter. Not only that, there are more and more extreme weather patterns around the world, either rainstorms or droughts. The most intuitive impact of abnormal climate is agricultural production. Our Lingnan garden started to cultivate winter vegetable seedlings at the end of September every year, 10 years ago. But now it needs to be done at the end of October. The students of farming class did not worry about whether the weather was sunny or rainy, nor did they talk about ecological issues or food security because these topics were too distant from them, studying in an AC-powered room. And Lingnan Gardeners project will guide students to focus on climate, energy, crisis, food politics, and other issues, and combine these topics with our undergraduate and postgraduate curriculum in the Department of Cultural Studies to explore ways to solve these crises and think about the future together with the students. What the Lingnan Garden builds is not only people's concern about food, about planting technology and ecology, but also it's building the relationship between people, especially in mutual cooperation, which is particularly important in agricultural labor and food sharing activities. Before the pandemic, Lingnan Gardeners would organize a food sharing meeting on campus every month, allowing people to bring their own food and share it with everyone. This is not a simple gathering of food, but a chance for people to communicate with one another. But unfortunately, we canceled the activity because of the pandemic. But people have repeatedly asked us, when do we restart the program? So it got me to wonder, why are people so eager to participate in social activities? Well, with the increasing development of the internet, it brings convenience to life and work. However, at the same time, it puts people in the virtual world more and more, dividing the people into individuals so that a lot of people feel at loss. There's nothing to rely on, have have nowhere to vent when facing challenges in life. While on the internet, people can meet each other for pleasure. It also makes people's spiritual world more empty, especially after a long time immersion in watching videos, scrolling on the phone. People often feel lost. So people are eager to return to the real world and face the real landscape and meet other human beings. Farming activities give people an interactive space and platform just for that. Let them exchange planting experience, exchange expertise and experience. In this small space, people's emotions can be seen and relieved. Puzzles can be solved together. And it's important to make real friends on this campus. Farming also brings alumni and students together to become a community where they share knowledge, food, and spirit, forming an even more cohesive campus culture. In the future, Lingnan gardeners will participate in the construction of DAO, the distributed self-organization based on blockchain technology, for rural construction. And together we will hope to achieve a sustainable agriculture future together. So here we're going to share some photos with you. This is where we held these food gatherings. Right now you're seeing the food and crops we grew on the campus. This is one of our postgraduates. He has 2 farms, organic farms. So every year we'll send students to his farms for field trips and listen to him share his experience in growing food. This is another activity we led on campus. Here, the students are walking on the irrigation pipes. Here, this is on our field trip. This is when we first started the garden. We experimented with using different materials to build our gardens. This is planting on these wastelands and vacant lots. So it took a long time for us to first till the ground and prepare it for farming, because this place was, it needed a lot of soil recovering. Our team won awards in 2010 for our efforts. And this is us during the pandemic leading these events, and students harvesting bananas from our own garden, feeling really proud. And here's, you're seeing a map of our campus. You can see our garden is, the size of our garden has been growing. So that's about our story. Thank you everyone for listening.
So for our guest speakers, please share your comments for like 1 and 2 minutes. And Yunita, please start first.
Thank you very much to the organizing committee. So I learned from my experience and also learning from you, the other speakers, that how to help the people, to educate them to understand better their environment, their habitat is very, very important. It is not the time any longer to just introduce technology. technology without adequate knowledge will not help them to understand what are the risks of their practices, what are the unforeseen consequences of climate change and all the risks of the technology driven are beyond the empirical knowledge of farmers, especially of those practitioners. So how to bring those knowledge into them? I believe that the dialectics between scientific and local knowledge can be produced, and we need to contribute to that so that we can help the people, the lay people, the fishermen, the farmers, and all the youth and others to be able to understand better what's happening in the planet, and then do something to avoid failures in their own efforts to improve their livelihood by also conserving the planet. Yeah, thank you very much.
So next, I would like to invite Yongki. Please take 1 or 2 minutes to give your final comments.
Thank you again for sharing all the different experiment and very enlightening cases. So maybe we all know the answer. So we all realize the unsustainability of modernization process, but who will redirect the drive? So that is we need many many pioneering champions. So for last decade, through this kind of South-South Forum for Sustainability, we shared a lot of miracles, and who did their best in their own context. But right now, so we try to make re-challenge those kind of scattered and patchwork cases, redirect the existing discourse. So reevaluation of traditional civilization, reevaluation of some kind of what does it mean really sustainability. So not only in physical basis, but also related with the cultural, historical, and the spiritual dimensions. So in that sense, this kind of sharings is one of the most important step towards the challenging our development course, which will drive us to some kind of tragic end. So we can nurture our own hope through this kind of encountering. So thank you again for this endeavor for us to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been great to see some of the examples of community and sustainability that the other participants have provided. And sadly, from an Australian perspective, there are small things that happen in Australia, but from the European society, there's not anything really great going on. But the one thing I didn't touch upon in my talk was the Aboriginal culture, and the Aboriginal people have an intimate, close, incredible connection with the land and nature and everything around them. And it was once upon many years ago, I thought, well, wouldn't it just be wonderful if the Australia's Western society could learn from the Aboriginal people about nature and the connection to nature? But sadly, our society isn't going down that path, but it still provides an example, I think, of something that other societies, and hopefully one day the Western society, can learn from to have a better ecological and be in better balance with nature.
So thank you, Ashley. Our last panelist, Lai Shan, and also so the team of Lingnan gardeners has shared their stories and practice. So if your internet allows, please share some final words.
In closing, the Lingnan Gardeners project is more than a garden. It's a movement in a city of skyscrapers, is Hong Kong. As a reminder that the soil beneath our feet holds the key to our survival. By promoting sustainable farming through community, education, and ecosystem, it takes small steps that ripple outward, inspiring a giant leap toward a healthier, more connected, and sustainable world. Let's join hands, dig into the earth, and plant the future together. And let our next generation have a healthier earth. May the Lingnan gardeners continue to flourish under the leadership of Professor Lau Qingqi. And I here special thanks to my Lingnan gardeners team members, Yan Xiaohui, Jin Peiyun, Kevin Zheng, Tan Tingting, Li Chaozhi, and Li Zhuoyuan for their dedicated partnership, to the colleagues of university and the colleagues really helpful to the Lingnan gardeners. I'm now thankful all the superior and the inferior colleagues in Lingnan in university, and to the Lingnan gardeners volunteers for their tireless care, making this blooming Lingnan garden possible. Thank you. And thanks for all my colleagues in here. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Lai Cheng, and also thank you all the panelists. This morning's discussion, we have to close now. And this afternoon, we will push back half an hour. We will start at 2:30. And so, okay, it's lunchtime. Thank you, everyone.